Morning, morning. Trevor Bernard here. We're here to further have some discussions with one of my mentors, Patrick Roxburgh. A lot of you might not know, but in my younger days in goat rearing and going all over the islands, Roxburgh was part of my mentor. We drove all over the island. He taught me so much because in those days when I was driving up and down the road with Patrick, I didn't really know much, and I learned a lot from Roxburgh. He was one of the main persons who let me understood the history of the industry, including Mr. Vermont, Mr. Vermont and I and Roxburgh. And I must also tell you that I learned from Albert Ferron and Dr. Graham. There is a wealth of knowledge, and I learned so much from going to the meetings and that the association, the training seminars that the association put on. So we are here now. Roxburgh.
Good morning, Patrick Roxburgh here. I was the first president of the Goat Breeder Society of Jamaica, which was formed in 1997, and that was basically on the back of Mr. Derek Vermont, Jasmine Holness, Charlie Harris, and a number of other people, including Albert Ferron from Cardi. The mandate of that organization was to teach farmers how to properly care for and have good animal husbandry, one. Two, to have registered animals. We would have a system where we could differentiate local stock from imported stock, meaning that all imported animals would have a registry to authenticate their purity, such as the boers, the Nubians, the Alpines that came in. We had previously goats like the Toggenburg and all that, which were housed at Hounslow and
Sani
and at Bodles. But unfortunately, no registration was ever kept. We had a mandate to correct that. And as such, what we did, we went out and we visited and made presentations to over 1,700 farmers island-wide. And we had good support from people like High Pro Farms, Lasco, and others, Cardi, just to name a few. I can't remember all of them right now, but we had good support from all these people who backed us in that venture. And I deem it as a successful venture. However, I think it went awry because we changed hands, and as a result, some of those programs went down the drain. Such as the key thing that we wanted, the registration of animals, right? We wanted to ensure that people were getting animals which were authentic, which were genuine, which were validated by the paperwork that they were presented with when they bought animals from local farmers. That has not been done, and unfortunately, we are having issues right now where people are relying on word of mouth and not validation through paperwork, where you can actually look back and see the lineage of animals that you are getting.
So, in your time, was this record keeping being practiced in your time?
Some people practice it. Some people were doing it, but it fell down. It fell through the cracks after a while, because there was no more insistence and no more follow from the organization, which was leading charge, that this thing should be kept in tow and to ensure that people were getting value for money.
So after you resigned, right? Because you resigned as president.
Not really.
You stepped down. Explain that to me.
What happened? There was a faction within the group, which was being pushed by a certain member. And when I realized what was happening, I didn't bother to go back.
But you didn't contest it?
No.
So you just had all of these frictions and these things happening, trying to pull down this thing.
Right.
So you just stepped away because you couldn't bother with the...
Yes, I couldn't bother with all of that. And as a result, a lot of the things that were implemented were discontinued.
Right. So it never Now, one of the next thing is that Roxy was one of the persons who imported animals to this country. Could you speak on that?
Well, I was the first person who imported the boer goat into Jamaica, and also the first person who imported the dorper sheep into Jamaica. These animals all came down with full paperwork.
They were full-bred animals.
Full-bred animals that came out of U.S. Dan Smith Farm in Texas, John Edwards in Texas, and Hawk from Alberta, Canada. And all these people came, these animals came with full paperwork and their origins. So we wanted to continue in that same trend and ensure that people were getting good stock with full paperwork and documentation.
But what happened?
That could back their credentials.
But so what happened with all of that? What is your opinion of happened with all? Because you sold most of those animals.
All of those animals were brought in for farmers. They were specifically ordered for farmers who, when they came, the animals were distributed to these farmers.
And record keeping was not followed, as far as you know.
It was kept up to a point, and then after that it dried up. I think after I left, not the organization, but came out of the leadership role, then all of these things kind of fell through the cracks. It was never kept up to the point where today, when an animal is sold, these animals were sold with paperwork.
Roxy, do you think there is any paperwork that can trace back to your animals that you imported?
I am sure there are. All of these farmers who received animals from me, from those importations, got their animals with paperwork, and I'm sure if as responsible people, they would need to have those certificates that authenticates the animals that they originally got. But I don't know. I can't say for sure if they have these paperworks in good condition at this point, because it has been years. I don't know if they have been following up with the offspring from these animals, if they're being properly registered and documented to ensure that people are still getting value for money and they are getting the full bred stock that they think they are buying. Right?
If you are not selling the animals and not getting a birth certificate, then
yes, it now becomes a questionable matter.
That's right.
And the reason why it becomes a questionable matter, because people have been, and I'm not, when I say people, I'm just generalizing, people have not been making sure that their animals are being bred in a manner to ensure purity or full bred status. So what you're buying is really, in a Jamaican term, puss in a bag. You cannot, and I repeat, you cannot authenticate an animal by saying, boy, this one made to that, and as a result it's purebred. You don't know, because we have seen, and I have seen personally, where people are buying animals, and when they buy these animals as full blood or purebreds, they put it in their herds and feel, and in thinking that they're breeding purebred or full blood animals, offspring are coming out with various color variations, especially in boer goats. They are coming out less than what they should be, and as a result, it now puts the whole breed line or bloodline in question.
You dilute it.
Yes. Somewhere along the line, some dilution has happened. The animal comes out looking good, looking like a purebred, but it's not a purebred. And this is where the whole question of follow-up and good paperwork is concerned, is now in jeopardy.
One of the things is that, and I'm going to just repeat this and say something more to what he just said. If Roxy has a purebred herd, a full-bred herd of, say, for example, boer goat, and he went and bought one ram that was a purebred without knowing, because he just bought this ram and didn't have the paperwork to show that this ram is a full-bred animal, but it ended up that this ram was a purebred or graded, he would have compromised his entire herd. His entire herd would have compromised. So that is telling you that you have to have paperwork and good record keeping to follow through.
Yes.
Another thing I must ask you, Roxy, in those days, you could just buy animals and bring in. Anybody could go and buy animals and bring, because it wasn't as strict as it is today. Explain to me what it was like bringing in animals back then.
Well, what we did, we were trying to introduce the whole concept of animals being able to be sold at an earlier age for commercial operations. So that's why we brought in the boer, because the boer goat essentially is a meat goat. It was developed for that purpose, strictly as a meat animal. And what it would do, it would enhance any commercial operation by getting your offspring up and running and ready for slaughterhouse between 3 to 6 months. And what we did when we brought in those animals, where we sold them to farmers who were doing either commercial operations or they were doing full-blood operations. So what you'll find of large commercial operations who did not import goats with those shipments, they would buy offspring from these full-blood farmers and put on their commercial herds to improve the growth rate and muscling of the animals at an early age, that they could make more money from their farms. That, in a sense, worked. But as we said, the paperwork did not follow those purchases. And from a commercial standpoint, it didn't matter. But from a full-blood standpoint, it mattered seriously, because we had...
Full-bred and purebred.
Yes. We needed to keep the records going. We need to keep the authenticity of these animals up to par with what we really wanted to do, because we essentially wanted to also export our animals to the Caribbean and become the hub of purebred breeding and full-blood breeding in Jamaica, and make Jamaica the hub of goat farming in the Caribbean.
And if we don't have that paperwork,
it can't happen.
Can't happen.
We have had a bad experience in one of our first exports to Puerto Rico, where the farmer who the animals were taken from could not produce paperwork. It put us in a bad light, right?
So this happened. We exported animals from Jamaica to Puerto Rico, but we didn't have the registry. We don't have proper record keeping.
That farmer did not practice the record keeping that he should have, and as a result, we took the animals from him, knowing where the animals came from, but that farmer did not document
any documentation.
And
it could not be authenticated.
Yes, exactly.
It wasn't real because there was no record keeping or any paperwork to authenticate it. But what I was also asking you, Roxy, that's a good point. I'm glad to hear that things like that was happening back then. We were exporting animals, and the problems that existed. So this is not new.
No.
And a lot of the old farmers, or a lot of the farmers who were doing and bringing in these animals, are aware of these issues, because registry and record keeping is not new. But also, I wanted you to highlight the fact that people were also importing animals that never had paperwork.
Yes, we became aware of what we'd call, I don't want to say it, but there were importations from auctions in the US. people went and bought animals at like 99 cents a pound in auctions. These were auctions that were selling commercial animals for slaughter.
Cull animals.
Culled animals.
Yes.
That's the correct word. They were culled animals and they brought it into Jamaica. And these animals were sold to Jamaican farmers as either purebred or full-blood animals.
Yes.
And this also created a problem because people were buying animals which they don't know what they were getting. They look like a boar, they behave like a boar, but they were not boars. They were crossbred animals.
They were crossbred culled animals.
Right.
And I hope everybody understand what a cull animal is.
If you want me to explain that,
I would.
A culled animal is an animal that has no full-blood value or value as a breeding animal, but an animal for the table. And what I mean by the table, it is supposed to be slaughtered and eaten, right? So we cull animals for that purpose, for table purposes. We cull animals because it is sick. We cull animals because it is
Deformed?
It is deformed. We cull animals for various reasons. So when people go and buy animals from abroad and buy from an auction, a culling auction, then you know what you're actually getting. You're getting riffraff.
Another thing to Roxy, when this appraisal come on board, farmers who have purebred and full-bred stock, some of these animals are not going to make it, and they are going to be best to be culled.
Or they can be put in a commercial operation where they are bred only for meat. They cannot be given a full-blood status or a purebred status because that will compromise the whole authenticity of the bloodlines going forward. So we can't just arbitrarily pick an animal and say, boy, it looked like a thing. It looked like a full-bred blood or it looked like a purebred animal and put it in. It can't be done that way. So it has to have authentication through paperwork and through lineage where it's traced back the lineage how many generations back. Knowing and this is an authentication that this animal is truly an animal that is coming from whence it is supposed to have come.
One of the things I always I'm always saying, and I get calls from people all the time asking me, look at this animal, what you think of the animal, how him look, you think him is full bred. Roxy, we can't look at an animal and tell if he's full bred or purebred.
You can't really. You can't. It has to be from a paperwork advantage.
Record keeping.
Record keeping. However, being a judge at Denbigh for quite a number of years now, and seeing people presenting animals in a showing as full-blood or purebred animals, and I have had to throw them out of the ring because they neither look like the purebred, they look very crossed, right? They just don't follow breed standards, right? And people are putting this in a showroom as purebreds. You can imagine what they're doing to other people who come to their farms to buy animals.
That's right.
People who are not in the know, they will sell them a Mickey, so to speak, right? And it is a dangerous advent for us to be having at this time in our goat development process, that people can be selling animals which are less than. And that what it does, it messes up the program totally. And we need for this to stop. We need to push now for registration, for appraisals to be happening, to ensure that the quality of the animals are being maintained. The purity or the full-bloodedness of the animals are being maintained, and people are getting value for money.
The small farmers need to be buying, especially farmers who don't really know how to do selection and don't know what they are doing. When these appraisals take place, you're going to have an external body that will judge this animal for you and tell you by that paperwork, is this a good animal to use on your herd? and what is the purity of this animal. Because another thing, by DNA, you really can't tell, Roxy, the percentage of the animal. You can't tell if it is 79 or maybe 99% by purity. You can only by DNA, as far as I know, see the bloodline. Maybe if Magnum or so forth is
you can have some element of tracing the animals forebears, meaning that you can see where the animal is coming from whichever line because of DNA. But in essence, you may not be able to prove its purity unless you have all factors on board, all the records on board that you can look back at, and then you can authenticate. But other than that, it's going to be very difficult.
Yes. So people, young farmers, especially you, the young farmers, we are here fighting to put things in place that when people go out there and buy animals, they are paying for what they are getting, right? The dishonest things that are happening need to stop. And we need to make sure that we protect all the farmers in Jamaica. And this thing, Roxy, if we put this thing in the right way, it's going to benefit everybody, the small and the big.
The whole industry will benefit exponentially from this, because that is what the aim is to ensure that what we are producing is of the highest quality, of the highest standard, and that is all we need to ensure that the industry goes forward in a very positive way.
It can go forward in a huge way if we don't fix this record keeping aspect of things. It is paramount, it is so important. And I think even at the Denbigh show, we should be asking for certificate of authenticity before we put a goat in the ring.
Well, I think we had tried to do that some years ago, and it started to work, and then it fell down again because there was no consistent follow, and that is what needs to be done. What we were possibly pushing for are the numbers, because we wanted numbers to be in the show. But we have to really push for this paperwork.
Birth certificates.
Yeah, to be put up front before animals can be shown as full blood or whatever.
Or purebred.
Yeah.
I hear this idea about a closed herd. Well, I personally don't really see any closed herd. But explain to us what a closed herd means and what you have seen.
Well, what I know about a closed herd is that this farmer or any farmer who runs a closed herd operation has to have animals that no outside influence is involved in the farm.
Or it's
in other words, it has to be from a line breeding operation where, as I said before, no outside blood is brought into the farm.
It can be brought in by AI though, or embryo.
It cannot be brought in by any means at all. It has to be, from what I understand, from animals that the farmer has bred and has kept in a manner that no introduction of foreign lines or outside lines can be brought into the herd. What it does is that it jeopardizes the quality, the standard, and the closed herd perception, right? As far as I know, a closed herd, no foreign animal is brought into the mix.
I have seen situation, even a pastor's situation, you have big pastors, and there's possibilities of a ram coming from next door into a pastor. Can't be a closed herd.
No, it can't be a closed herd at that time.
And if you're bringing in a ram from another farm and you don't have a birth certificate, for example, because there's this concept, Roxy, once you bring in a full-bred animal ram to your full-bred herd, it is okay to say it's closed. But if you don't have a birth certificate for that ram that you bring into your farm, number one,
as far as I know, as I said before, and I'll repeat it, and I stand to be corrected as well, but as far as I know, any closed herd operation does not bring in any outside blood. whether it's full blood or not, it is kept close through line breeding. And line breeding means that you breed within that same herd. In other words, cousin to aunt, that kind of thing.
Or you could have 5 different lines.
You can have different lines, but they're all interbred. You don't bring in any foreign blood whatsoever, or else it is not deemed a closed herd.
So you are suggesting that maybe we don't have any closed herd, because if anybody bringing in, I didn't even know this is new to me. I thought you could bring in AI or embryo.
You can't actually. You have to keep the animals within the lines that you already have established, and you keep the animals within those lines. That is what you call a closed herd.
If I take my animals to the Denbigh show, then I don't have a closed herd? Is that what you're saying?
What a closed herd means that your animals are not exposed to any outside influence whatsoever. A closed herd means just that. It is closed. You don't expose your animals. And taking your animals to a showground, it can in some way or other expose your animals to outside influences. You don't know when or how a buck from another farm might escape, run into your herd and into your space and serve one of your animals. That alone compromises what you're working for and what you're doing.
You know something, Roxy? That kind of makes sense also, because you know something, you're not supposed to make your herd get exposed to other animals either because of the disease.
Because of the diseases that can be picked up and compromise your herd as well. So when you have a closed herd, it is just that you are not supposed to expose them at all to any outside influence whatsoever. This is why when people run closed herds, they have no other influence, neither by artificial insemination, embryo transfer, or by introducing a live animal into their flock. It does not compute. It runs your program amok, right? So when you have a closed herd, you have your lines and you work within those lines and produce the highest standard of animals. Currently, Jamaica's goat meat demand is being met largely by imports. We are still importing up to 85 to 90% of all our goat meat consumption. And that is bad. A country like this who eats goat morning, noon and night. We eat goat when a baby born. We eat goat when somebody dies in our family. We eat goat when we are getting married. We eat goat for everything in Jamaica. In Jamaica, goat is a part of our culture. Curried goat is a part of our culture. Mannish water is a part of our culture. So for us to be importing 85 to 90% of goat meat into this country is really a travesty. We need to correct that. We need to have our own production here where we can be self-sufficient in goat meat production.
Another part of this registry is also the performance of the animal. And also, there's another side of it where the registry also is going to look at, shouldn't it be looking at, for example, illnesses or, the veterinarian stuff? Give me your take.
Yes, we have always had a close relationship with the veterinary division of Jamaica. For more than one reason. One, you just mentioned for health reasons. We need to keep them close to us to help guide us in how we handle our health issues where the animals are concerned.
And importation.
And mainly for importation of animals, because we have had a system in place where whenever we are going to import animals, the farm that we're going to import from has to be a registered farm, one, a farm that is free basically of all diseases, a farm that is monitored on a yearly basis or a biannual basis to ensure that the farm
meets all the standards for export.
For export, exactly.
There was a particular case you mentioned.
And as I mentioned that, and as Mr. Bernard is intimating at the moment, there was a particular case where I am aware of, where this farmer went on his own, actually paid for a set of animals, when the veterinary division got involved, because they have to be involved, because they are the ones who have to issue the certification or the license for that person to import the animals. When the animals were checked, they were all sick. They all had an illness that we could not allow them to come into Jamaica. That man lost his money and lost his animals. So this is where the veterinary division is so important in ensuring that healthy animals come into the island.
And the registry plays a part in all of this.
Exactly.
Because when you're buying these animals, the farms abroad, and it has the history of even the health.
Yes. The health history is very important, and the veterinary division will check on that as one of their primary issues, because they don't want sick animals to be coming into the country.
And when we are going to export animals,
exactly, they have to be involved as well, because we can't export sick animals. It is a priority of that division to ensure that what comes in, they are in good health, and what goes out, they are in good health.
And the veterinarian division, when we are going to be exporting animals, record keeping and a registry is important.
Yes. In other words, we're not supposed to be exporting animals which don't have a good
birth certificate.
Yeah, like birth certificate. We don't have good records on them to know exactly where they're coming from and the health history on them. So it's key. All right. Just wanted to mention that we are still importing far too much goat meat into this country. Between 2015 and 2019, we were importing in the region of 1.002 million kilograms of goat meat into this country. That is poor. We need to be more self-sufficient. We need to have more farmers involved.
I am so happy to have this conversation today with my good friend Roxburgh. He still continues to train me, and he still continues to advise me. He's one of my big advisors. Anytime I have any problem, because I don't know everything, but Roxburgh has the history, he has everything, and I really look up to him for more knowledge all the time. And one of the things I want you to know, people out there, is that I am surrounded by a lot of very smart people who understand what the industry needs to grow. I am so glad to have brought this to you, and please continue to subscribe and watch my channel, and thank you so much for watching. Big up. Thanks, Mr. Roxburgh.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure to be able to make a contribution at this stage, because what we want to see is always development and the growth of the industry, because our aim initially was to make Jamaica self-sufficient in goat meat production and lamb. We are not even close to that yet. We still need a lot of input. We still need a lot of farmers to get involved. We need to produce all that here, that we can be self-sufficient. And that is our aim.
Thanks so much for watching. Big up.
The mother must come up back. Yeah. You check, look at the two breasts. Look at only one side of the breast. They must come from. Other one, they want. Look at that. Let me see. The one milk out the other side of the breast. Or put them on it. Them only sucking one side, That's because the breast gets sick. Keep on it. All right, in mango season, I will feed something like maybe 700 pounds of mangoes a day. Some of it you're under feed and some you're over feed. Remember I tell you I don't want to feed in here, so it's like
You love jumping, Jump on me.
Which one you say you're going to feed with?